So in terms of, we got the resting metabolic rate piece here. What about your work with energy expenditure and some of the targets for fueling for youth athletes?
So what we did then was, after we looked at the resting metabolic rate, so that first big component of energy expenditure, we then wanted to look at total energy expenditure. So the three components of total energy expenditure. So we assessed that across three different age groups. So an under-12s and 13s age group, an under-15s age group, and an under-18s age group. And we did that because those three age groups were at distinctly different stages of growth and maturation.
For sure.
And we assessed total energy expenditure via doubly labeled water, which is the gold standard technique for assessing total energy expenditure in free living conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't interfere with training or competition or school. It's a good method for that. So we assessed that over a 14-day in-season period. We also assessed energy intake as well at the same time, just to see where they're actually meeting what they should be doing, where they meeting their energy requirements. And so if we first look at the expenditure data, the under-18s, so they were 16, 17-year-old players, they were expending on average about 3,600 kilocalories per day.
Wow.
Now, what was interesting was actually the range of values across all the age groups. But in some players in the under-18s, they were expending up to 5,100 kilocalories per day on average.
Wow, that's covered a lot of miles.
The under-15s were expending in and around 3,000 kilocalories per day. And then the 12s, 13s group were around 2,900 kilocalories per day. But as I say, there's huge individual variation between players, even within the same age group. But as I said, 5,100 kilocalories per day in one of the players. And when you then try to translate that into food and what they should be doing, that's a lot of food.
It's a full-time job just eating that much food.
Yeah, certainly. And then if we contextualize that data to Liam Anderson, who's done some great work, and he did the similar study within adult Premier League players, professional adult Premier League players at Liverpool Football Club, and the under-18 values were similar to the adult values as a mean, but obviously the 5,100 kilocalories was higher than the adults in that case. And clubs in the Dutch top division. And again, the expenditures in the under-18s group were higher than adult values. So when you actually start to think about that, right, these kids are growing and maturing. They've got the busy schedules from a school point of view, and then they train later in the day, and then you're thinking of the feeding of them. Like, it's crazy. It's really, some people might say they're not that high compared to some of the endurance sports and stuff, but when you actually think about putting it together and then delivering that in terms of food and meeting that in terms of energy requirements, it's in the context of the schedule as well, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive. And even just, again, the portability, the convenience of it all, of being able to carry all this around and get access to it. I mean, those are the little things that obviously, you go through with your athletes, but it's something that when a parent or a coach or someone starts to think about this, it's like, you need a full backpack or fridge on your back just to get through a day for a young athlete who's going around doing all these things. Otherwise, you're going to fall pretty short of the requirements. And back to your point around, we need to fuel with some of these things that in the general population we might think is far too much fuel or too much sugar or whatnot. It may be, but again, with this massive energy expenditures, you got to find a way to be able to get that fuel in, right?
Yeah, certainly. And I guess that one of the differences between, say, we look at a Premier League adult player compared to an academy player, the full-time senior players, that's really their sole focus. This is their job, and train and recover and fuel and all that kind of stuff. These youth athletes, they have the growth and maturation aspect and element they also have these school schedules. So then, as you say, when you look, actually, you can't feed them for a lot of time because they're in school and class. They can't be eating or training, So you have to be really quite tactical about what you're giving them and when you're giving them. And that suits them and their schedule.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it really becomes highly tactical. What's portable, what's easily accessible, trying to find the things that actually fit the macros that you're after. Not always easy, is it?
Not always, no. Yeah. I'm one of the professional academies within the UK and Premier League academies. They're generally pretty well funded, but if you then start to look outside, similar or youth athletes, with similar training and competition demands, but in sports that are less funded, they're then having to front all that themselves. From a nutrition provision point of view, in a lot of these Premier League academies, they're quite fortunate. They get given 1 to 2 meals a day from the club, but that's not always the case in other sports. So yeah, it certainly needs time and thought.